Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Jason's Take On, our first one for 2020. A big Happy New Year to everybody. I know it's approaching the time when you no longer say Happy New Year, but this is our first podcast webinar for 2020. So welcome everyone into the year. 2020 is that bold vision year that we've talked about for many, many years. And for us, really, we want to kick the year off by talking about this. What are the bold things that you're going to be doing this year in customer success? What are the bold ideas that we've seen? What are the big trends that are coming up? This is the first one that we've done that is not a live webinar. So we're going to do this as a podcast that you can listen to on your favorite podcast channel. And we'll be alternating. So some we'll do as live webinars as we've done before, where people can ask questions there and we'll respond. But others we're going to do as a podcast and just see how it takes us there. So welcome everybody. Really excited to be here. I'm Jason Noble, based in London in the UK. My partner, Jason Whitehead, is over in the US. Today, we're going to be talking about what should the bold vision for 2020 be for customer success. As usual, we have a bold challenge question, and the one for this episode is, what is your plan and vision for the new bold action that you will take to improve your customer success program in 2020? We'll revisit that at the end of the podcast, but do let us know in our LinkedIn group or on Twitter. Please let us know what your thoughts are around this. So what bold actions and bold visions are you taking in your own customer success program and organization in 2020? We'll kick off, and I'll throw the first question over to my good friend, Jason. Jason, what were the big trends in customer success that you saw in 2019? So kind of a recap of the last year.
Yeah, I think we saw quite a few, and it's great to be here for 2020 and talking about this. And, for me, it's really exciting just to see how much customer success as a discipline and as a field has evolved over the past 5 years or 7 years. I can't believe it's been that long already. But it's really, I think, come into the industry very quickly and started to mature, but I think there's still a long way to go before we're there. So I'll share a couple ideas, and Jason jump in with a couple of yours, and we'll bounce back and forth. But I think one of the big things that we've seen in 2019 was an increased focus on CS as a career. And, when you look at just the growth in the number of CS roles and positions that are out there, and, how many companies are realizing that they really need to help drive customer success, and that they need to invest in teams and hire people who have the skills to do this, that's really exciting for me to see. And I assume a lot of people have seen, but I don't know, that when you look at the number of jobs listed on LinkedIn for CS careers, and it's consistently been listed as one of the top 5 or top 10 most active careers that people are hiring for, it's really exciting just to see what this is. So that's really exciting. And similarly, and Jason, you and I have talked about this, is the growth in the number of professional training and certifications in customer success. And obviously I'm a little biased here since, I have CS Mastermind with my co-founder, Sue Abbott Moore, who's just fantastic.
High quality training though.
Indeed, it's very high quality. And thank you for that shameless plug. And encourage people to check it out. But it's exciting just to see how much of a demand there is, and that people realize that CS is a different skill set, and it requires different training and knowledge base and behaviors and confidences, and it's great to see that. So I think that's really exciting. And it just really shows too that when you see how many people are struggling to find qualified CS people, especially CS leaders, there's a lot of folks who have worked in CS, and now they're trying to very quickly get promoted into those leadership tracks, and that's exciting to see just that there's such a demand for it. So I'm really excited about that. And Jason, I believe you were mentioning too that when we were talking about this, the fact that when you look at the C-suite and so many companies and how they're really having more C-level roles, chief customer officer, chief customer experience officer, things like that, people are really starting to realize that the customer needs to be central and key to everything they do. So I think that's one that I would pick that's really exciting. What about you?
I think that last one's one that really stands out to me. I think we've seen a great trend over the last couple of years for these board level executive C-level roles, typically chief customer officer. But that trend is absolutely continuing. It continued last year, and it's continuing as you go into 2020. And what we're also seeing is that it isn't a chief revenue officer that's also got customer responsibilities. Quite often you see a chief revenue officer and a chief customer officer as two different roles. So that, as you said, that focus on the customer is absolutely growing, and it's really exciting to see that. So I think that for me is the one that really leaps out.
Yeah, and sort of relates to that. I've known I spoke with a lot of organizations where when they first launched CS, the CS team was reporting up to operations or to sales. People weren't quite sure where it should report up to, and that awareness that it should report right to the CEO is really really telling and key.
Yep.
Do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, I think the other one that I think we've seen, and I know you and I spoke about this, is really the awareness around customer success. So what do we mean by that? It's the awareness with executives, with businesses, with organizations, that there is a need for customer success. It isn't just a fad. It's not something that's just going to grow and go away. And I think we're seeing executives and organizations realizing that they need to focus more and more on growth, retention, and it doesn't just happen. And that's really exciting to see that. And I think the awareness also of the importance of really effective onboarding. How do you get your customers onboarded? How do you make sure you're implemented and achieving what your customers want? And that we've spoke about it many times, but that effective sales handover or hand overlap process, as we've called it before. I think we're also seeing that investors are really realizing that there's a need for them in their portfolio companies to require customer success programs, and that trend's continuing, and also for businesses to fund customer success programs that are going to grow. And they understand that absolutely the initial sale is still important, but what the key to growth of the investment, the ROI, the key to success for the customer and the organization is around growth of customers, and that comes from the success of those customers. And I think the other great thing around awareness is we're seeing an increasing number of business books being published around customer success. All sorts of different titles from people that you and I know well in the industry. It's phenomenal to see when your friends, colleagues start publishing books that get awards and recognized. But that's a trend that has really taken off more over the last year, and we're beginning to see that continue. I think another thing that we've seen around customer success in 2019 is really around maturity, and it kind of ties into that awareness one. That there really is an improved understanding of what customer success means. The value of outcomes and what that means. What are customer outcomes? What should we be saying to our customers? What does value mean? Our customers understand it a lot better. It means a lot more to them. And customers are getting exposed to a lot of different versions and ideas around customer success when they speak to all their different partners, their different vendors, their different technology integrators. And our customers are becoming aware that customer success isn't the same in all organizations, and there is a benchmark that different organizations are setting there. And I know that you Jason, have a download on your Triton's website that helps companies evaluate if their customer success services are competitive and where they sit. And I know that's something that we've spoken about.
Yeah, I think that's such a big one too, because like you said, so many different vendors all have different flavors of CS, and as the buyer of software, you're inundated and you start to have expectations about what a customer success team will and won't do and the impact they have. And I do encourage people to check out the download, just really, how do your CS services stack up from your customer's perspective? Here are some questions to ask yourself and how you can evaluate, and it really can help people. And I think you're going to see more of that, where sales are going to be won and lost on the value of their customer success services as a key decision factor. Not people are looking beyond just feature and function, but they really are saying, can this organization make me successful? Will they deliver the outcomes that I need? It's great to have features and functions, but if we don't use them and they're not getting value, it doesn't matter.
I think that's such an encouraging thing as well. When your customers are seeing that, it really does shift the conversation. They're not just, your customers are after about something long term that's going to mean something to them. What about, I'll ask this one to you, but what are your thoughts around kind of customer success teams? What kind of trends have we seen then, and for kind of people looking at customer success as a career?
It seems like a lot of the teams we've spoken to this year, where people are really wanting their CS professionals to increase their confidence in their ability to really lead customers and get the customers to trust them. We hear all the time the term, they want to be a trusted advisor, and yet most people don't necessarily know what additional advice to provide customers outside of their product. And they don't know how to earn that trust. And there's been a lot of demand that we've seen to help grow the soft skills and the confidence of CS professionals to really engage customers differently in a new way. It sort of relates to that. What we're seeing is a lot of people are trying to shift from getting their team to move beyond just focusing on their product, because many of them are product experts, to really be that expert in helping customers achieve their business outcomes and challenge their customers to do things in a new way that will get a different result. And yet, from the CS staff perspective, many of them struggle with knowing how to do that or just be comfortable doing that. So I think that's a big shift I'm seeing. And then I think the last piece too is just the growth in the sheer number of CS professionals and vendors, whether it's more consultants, more trainers, more integrators, and even more CS automation tools and platforms coming into the space. And we've seen something where just new vendors are coming into the space, but also where a lot of software vendors are adding just more features and functions that could apply to customer success. And so they're sort of labeling it a customer success use case.
Didn't you say that you someone that had demos from something like 19, 20 different vendors?
I was shocked when I heard that. Yeah, the individual said that they were evaluating what to go and what tools to, and found 19. And I mean, obviously we know of all the big ones that are out there, and I know there's a lot of emerging ones, especially in Europe, are coming out, and probably more in other places as well too. But it boggled my mind that someone would both identify that many, but also would invest the time to evaluate.
Yeah, I think the identifying that many is incredible. I mean, I've done that process a few times and have not had 19 before, but it does just show that the awareness, the interest, everything we've said there is really driving this, and more people are taking note that they need to do something about it.
Yep, absolutely. So, Jason, why don't we move on a little bit and tell me a little bit about your expectations in terms of what did we see last year that did not work out?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think trends don't necessarily mean everything's right all the time. There can be some trends that are not necessarily good, and this is kind of looking at that. And I think there are a number of key ones that we're still seeing some big challenges with. I think one of the big ones that I see consistently is internal alignment. So people becoming more aware of the need and issues around being internally aligned, but it's still not happening enough. And organizations are still not working consistently and breaking down those silos. It's having different silos in organizations with different objectives, different targets, different KPIs that don't have the customer in them is still very, very consistent. I still think there are a lot of organizations that still think of customer success as a department or even a tool. We all talk about how it's an operating philosophy, a way of working, but there are very few organizations still where it is seen as that operating philosophy that is truly included in all parts of the organization. So I think that internal alignment is a big one. And I'm a big believer that going into 2020, it is something that we're going to see shift. I think on a similar vein, you've also got some challenges still around sales, and many sales organizations and even sales leaders are still working in an old way or older way of doing it. They're focused, as we said earlier on, they're focused on that short-term sale, about that initial win, about the commission, the incentive from that sale. They're not focusing as much as they should on lifetime value for customers and actually the customer's own outcomes. I think we've talked about this before, but many commission plans, incentive plans are still focused on that upfront win, getting a lot of the commission incentive paid based on what that initial sale is. I think it's going to be something that's going to take a long time to change there. And I know, Jason, you've spoke about it before, and for you, you've kind of said it isn't just people that need to change, but also how you land the sale, how you work to do it. So there's a lot of changes that we've spoke around that.
Yeah, and I think you're right that it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think it's going to shift quicker than people think. That CEOs and even sales leaders are going to quickly realize that we need to incentivize and reward those long-term sales and not just the initial piece. And they're going to figure out how to adjust their compensation, selling techniques to do that. But I think it starts with that awareness, like we need to make a change here, and then they will start to figure out how that works and what doesn't.
It'll be interesting to see what the catalyst for that is, because it is something that needs to change, but what's going to be the catalyst that changes it? Is it one organization that starts doing it differently, and there's kind of a group of sales leaders that then develop a new way of working? I don't know. It would be an interesting one to watch. I think we're still seeing, or we've still seen over the last 12 months, kind of a misrepresentation, mischaracterizing of what customer success actually does. So the sales guys not positioning customer success correctly. We're beginning to see customer success being brought into the sales process earlier, before closing, but it's not consistent still. And I think there's a lot of work to be done there. And I think you're still seeing a lot of organizations where they're not selling customer success. You know, customer success done properly is an awesome differentiator for your business. It will absolutely help you close more deals, more business, bring customers in. As we've said before, it really brings case studies to life. It really shows about what the relationship's going to be afterwards. And I think that's really, really critical there.
Yeah, and I think that outcome selling piece is going to be huge. You know, and then if you're a vendor that can get there first and have the proof that your CS services deliver, and the combination of your CS service plus a great product and feature,
yep,
you know, that's going to be a huge thing.
But what about any trends that you've seen, Jason? Any other ones that you could add that we need to see more work being done on?
Yeah, I think some of the areas where people are still struggling, surprisingly enough, is a lot of the customer success automation tools and tool changes there. You know, we're already seeing people who are switching platforms. You know, maybe they had a Gainsight or a Tango and they moved to a Turn Zero or a Strike Deck or something else, or one of the others. Also, I've run into multiple organizations where they've had to re-implement their CS tool because they had it live and they realized they had over-configured it, or their data wasn't correct, or it wasn't what it was. So, you know, I think organizations that rush to get the CS automation platforms in too quickly, or rush through the process of implementing them, you know, some of them have already said this is a painful process, and we'll come back and we'll have to invest more time and money and effort to get it right, to get it really optimized where we need it. And you could argue that's the case with any platform, really, that you know, you need to have some time to experiment with it and figure out how it's going to work best in your organization. But I think there's just been some real challenges there that have surprised people. And, you know, you and I talked about this as well too, where I think a lot of CS vendors, you know, are assuming companies, their, you know, CS vendors, that their buyers will have the specialized resources that they need to get the tool and the implementation done well. You know, and that's just not always the case. And yep, you probably had some experience with that too that you can share.
I think it is. I think there's a you know, a lot of these tools are very complex, quite rightly so, and you do absolutely, in the way they work, it's almost like a kind of a Salesforce-esque implementation. You know, there's a lot of configuration that needs to be done, not necessarily customization, but configuration and setup, and it's understanding that, and that does require resources on organizations, and I've seen it in a number of different organizations. So I think it is a trend that's a very interesting one to watch.
Yeah. And then I think the final area that people are still struggling in 2019, and I think they will do more work on, but will continue to struggle and mature in 2020, is really that struggling around getting low touch right. And I think a lot of organizations, they have a low touch effort because they think it's, you know, that's where the bulk is, that's where we can go. And I think a lot of the initial efforts on it had really taken the approach of email marketing and how do we automate some trigger-based messages, and really relying on push messages to folks. And I don't think that's necessarily as effective as it's going to be. And it's not quite year if they're really having the impact they need. And I think people are going to start to look at how do we do not just push messages, but also a one-to-many approach, or how do we work in cohort style with a large number of our customers to help scale. So it's not no touch, but it is a different kind of touch. Yeah. As well as I think people need to realize as well too that while working with low touch approaches, is that you really do need to pilot test some of these efforts. You know, some people talk about a pilot and they forget years ago it was actually called a pilot test to see what works and what doesn't. And some A/B testing to really see, is this having the impact that we want on customers as well as other teams. And I spoke to one organization, and you know, they tried to up their low touch game, and they ended up sending out some messages out to all of their customers, which had the increased engagement, but it also flooded the CSMs and their support team with unexpected questions. So they had to work through that volume of stuff because they hadn't gone through just testing it with a small group first to see the impact and the reach. So that was a lesson learned for them as well too. It was like, oh, okay, when doing this, sometimes the impact is not always what we want.
Yeah.
So with that, I think it's sort of a nice recap of 2019 and leads us into, you know, Jason, what are the visions and your big ideas that you see coming now and that you think will continue in 2020?
I think there's a few here, and I think it is about ones that are going to continue, so not necessarily brand new things that are going to happen. But I think a couple of the key ones are we're going to, so based on kind of your conversation there about low touch rather, we are going to see an increased use of automation, but at the right level to help customer success. We've talked before about the idea of tech-enabled to touch as opposed to just tech touch. So the ability to bring in the human touch at the right point and right level. I think we're going to see a big drive on this and a big push on that. We're also going to see more in-product customer success functionality, as we spoke about on one of our podcasts, the one we had Dave Jackson speaking, the idea of product-led customer success. So there's going to be a lot more focus on that, I think. We are going to see this, as we've said too, the big challenges are the lack of focus on internal alignment. So we're going to see a big push on that. I think organizations will, with the increase in leaders that are coming in with C-level customer positions, those breaking down of the silos will continue to happen. And that's a trend that I'm really excited about seeing. I think you are going to see, as we said, with the C-levels there, organizations are going to have senior execs that have focus on sales and revenue, and then a separate person who focuses on the customer. So the idea of a chief sales officer or a chief revenue officer and a chief customer officer or a chief customer experience officer in the same organization, that's something I think we're going to see more of. And then I also think you're going to see more and more startups and new companies coming in, and particularly small organizations that start earlier on in their development, trying to understand what customer success is, why they need to do it. And really from day one in their life cycle are going to be focused on customer retention a lot more, which is really exciting to see. I don't know, were there any others that you could add there? Any big visions that you've thought of?
Yeah, I think all those, I'm especially excited to see what's going to happen this year in like the next 3 to 5 around startups, especially as you get founders who have gone through an exit where they had invested in CS and realized the impact it can have and realized they need to do it sooner. And I think even more investors are going to start to demand from day one, we need to have at least a CS vision and strategy in place, if not a team right away to get there. The other thing that I keep seeing, and I think we're going to see more of, is there seems to be a lot more interest and demand for having CS training and certification. And people seem to want to have training that delivers a certification, but yet there's still not a clear consensus on what that is or even why. But people seem to want to have a certification, both either as an individual or as a buying for a team. Like, oh, we need to make sure they're certified. And there's some great work going on. We're working with the Customer Success Association to help figure out what is an industry benchmark for what that needs to look like. I know, as are several of our competitors and the other CS training vendors in the area. And I think that will be great when you can get some consensus around this is the core skill and knowledge base that people need to have.
That's something that so needs to happen. It's kind of that normalization around it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that will be coming. And right now, a lot of the vendors offer their own certification, as we do as well too, based on our experience and our understanding of what the knowledge is, required skills and knowledge base are. But I think it really will help to have sort of a industry vision around that. And I think that will also help within the organizations themselves elevate the importance of customer success. Like, this is a body of knowledge. We've seen it with project management. You've seen it with financial advising. You see it with a lot of industries where certification does help elevate everyone's game. So I think that's exciting. But that's sort of some of the trends I think we're seeing. But Jason, I would really love to hear what is your vision of what you would like to see? What are some of the bold changes that you would like to see coming in 2020? If you had your magic wand, what would you put in it?
Such a great question, this, and this is one that I know you and I have spent some time kind of just thinking about this, but and I think you do, a lot of this depends on the organizations that people work with, the customers work with. But I think some of the key ones for me, or one of the big ones that I really want to see happen more and more, is that customer success becomes, and I think it is becoming, a part of normal business operations. It isn't going to be such a new thing anymore. It will just be part of what we do as business leaders, as business owners, as founders of businesses. And it won't be this completely separate thing that people have to justify and kind of invest in. It's like, think about sales. You never get an organization that says, well, should we do sales? I don't know. It needs to be like that, though. And I'm saying this with a smile on my face, but it makes you wonder, customer success still for many is new, but I want to see that completely shift. And I think as part of that, for me, whether it's this year or 2 or 3 years from now, I think we will probably stop using the term customer success at some point. I think it's done its run. I think it's served a purpose. But it's still, one of the challenges we've got is it means so many different things to different people. And for your customers, quite often, if you talk about customer success, they don't like the terminology. I think we'll start using something that is more around the word outcomes, the word growth, consulting. So it's something there that we'll see. And I really do think that'll happen. As you said, it kind of shifts from being that brand new thing that everyone wants to just being something that we all do and everyone knows what it is. I think some bold changes that I'd really like to see happen this year, and this kind of alludes to what you just said, is the coming together of certifications. There are too many different ones out there right now, and there isn't an industry standard. So if I'm an organization or someone in customer success that wants to up my game, where do I go? What is an industry standard? How do I know the one I'm picking actually will stand me in good stead and mean something? And that's really difficult now. So whether it's going to be aligned with vendors or aligned with big consultancies, I don't know, but I'd really like to see an industry standard and a normalization coming together of them. I think one big change that I'd like to see is technology vendors. And this, thinking about this, initially I was thinking this about just customer success kind of vendors, customer success management platform vendors, but just generally for all vendors of technology, make it easier to implement, to onboard. There are a lot of complexities with enterprise level technology now, but I think there's a lot of work organizations can do and still need to do, and I really believe will do, to make the process of getting customers up and running with their tools easier and quicker, but ultimately getting that time to value and delivering what value is and what the outcomes are. So I really want to see a big push on that. And the kind of final point I'd make is this ongoing standardization of what it is we're talking about. What good customer success is. What does it mean for businesses? And that, I think, ties in with how it becomes just a normal business process. What are we trying to do? So it's almost a visionary statement of what it's all about. If you look at sales, there isn't a different understanding of what sales is depending on the organization. There isn't a different understanding of what support is or what marketing is. Everybody understands what good sales is, and I'd like that standardization there to continue there. So they're just some of my thoughts there, and I think it is. I think it's going to be a very exciting year, 2020, for customer success. So I'm super excited to be still working hard in that field with some very phenomenal customers and organizations, and to do this as well. Jace, any that you'd add to that? What are your thoughts? What's your own?
I got a list of things I'd like to see, because I think you're right. The industry has. I do think that the industry has come so far in a very short period of time, but I really want to see a lot more bold action and a lot of leaders taking bold action, and frankly, a lot of CEOs and senior executives really taking bold investments in changing their organization to embrace not just customer success practices, not just departments. And I think the big one here is that when I go into organizations, really getting the CEO and the other executives to understand this touches all parts of the organization. You've got to have that alignment. You've got to have everyone change, and that means making some changes to the way you do your business. And that's going to be painful for some folks, but it's a necessary thing. It's not just a single department. It's not a single person. It's not a single tool. And I'm actually starting to advocate for, I think organizations really need to think about, do they need a chief collaboration officer or a chief collaboration and customer officer to really have that mandate and authority to say, how do we get this internal alignment, not just in terms of, our processes and handovers and all that great stuff, but really making sure that we're living it and breathing it and continuing to evolve it to meet customer needs. And if you don't have a single person there with the authority and the resources to make that happen, it's just not going to happen. And you're always going to have, things getting missed and miscommunications. And I've seen so many organizations spend a ton of time and effort wasted on internal fighting around issues when it's like, look, guys, just get this together and focus your energies on something more, and everyone will be thrilled, especially your customers. So I think that's going to be a key thing. And I really would like to see a lot of organizations start to take a step back and rethink, why do you even need CS in the first place? Why are you even making this investment? What does that look like? And the answer that I keep coming up with is a lot of customers, a lot of buyers are not good at getting value from technology on their own, and not just your system, but any system. And, having studied information systems in school and looking through some of those pieces, so many of the educational piece and practices in most organizations is just focused on getting a system live and people trained up and out the door, but not on what happens next, and not on how to make sure you're collaborating together, coming back to that chief collaboration officer, to make sure people are using the tools internally, to make sure people are using the processes internally. I think organizations need to really figure out how to build the capacity of your customers to adopt technology, not just deliver a service. So I think that's a big one. And I think if you take that approach, some of what we've already seen is really how do you get your customer success staff to be more business consultants and outcome consultants and less product experts, and really moving beyond the product to not just help focus their customers on the outcomes they need to get, but also have some methodology and tools and expertise that they can lend their customers that the customers may not have in-house. And I think when I've seen organizations do that as a CS team, their customers have great results and are thrilled by the support and love what they get. I just don't see enough CS teams doing that yet. I think just a couple others too. I think seeing more CS folks really improve their relationship skills and their soft skills, but the big thing, their confidence. And I think as a CS member, if you can't be confident in what you have to say, how can you expect your customers to be confident enough to follow your directions and to follow your activities? And confidence goes a long way, and it's contagious, and it can really help your customers, but that is something that has to be learned and practiced over time, and I'd like to see a lot more teams doing that. And then I think finally, last couple, we talked about coming back to really helping customer success engage pre-sales more and helping educate and set expectations with customers of here's all things that you as a customer will need to do internally to achieve success with our tool or even one of our competitors, but really setting those expectations and lending that information, that resource up front, so customers are not as surprised and that they're willing to commit to do what it takes to achieve success. And that'll be a huge one. I think the final one comes back to what you and I mentioned before too, is really getting executives and investors to focus on adjusting sales compensation and sales behavior where they're selling for renewals from the very beginning and not selling for new logos. And really, how do you get your salespeople from the very beginning, get their customers set to their prospect and say, look, we want to have you as a customer for the next 20 years. We don't want to get you as a customer tomorrow. We want to get you and keep you. And here's how we're going to make sure that happens. And that's a very different sales discussion, a very different sales process. And I'd like to see that. And I'm not seeing a lot of that yet, but I think that would be pretty huge.
I think that last one is just such a great one to end on, because that's what we're looking for. We don't want short-term relationships. We want our customers to be successful using what we're delivering over a long period and drive their lifetime value of what we can do, increase their growth, increase their success. So that's just a phenomenal one that really kind of brings it all together.
Yep.
I think that kind of just to recap before we close off here, kind of the bold question that we had there was, what is your plan and vision for the new bold action that you're going to take to improve your customer success program in 2020? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please comment on our LinkedIn group, YouTube, wherever you're listening to the podcast. You can catch us up on Twitter, email us in. It's a great discussion for us, some great ideas that really kind of opened my eyes a bit listening to Jason here. And I hope it's added value there as well, but we'd really love to hear your thoughts as well. Jason, before we kind of close off, do you want to just kind of give a quick summary of what we're going to talk about over the next couple of months?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the year ahead. We sat down and planned out some of the topics that we know we'd like to cover. And if folks have other suggestions or things you'd like to talk with us about, please, share in our LinkedIn group or on Twitter. So the next couple of topics we have, what should your CS organization look like in 2020? How do you structure it? What should it be doing? What sort of skills can you need? So I'm excited about that one, to really make sure you've got the right team in the right way set up to really deliver your CS vision. And I think we're going to start about talking about the future startups and how to integrate CS from the very beginning, how to set your new organization up right out of the box. And that'll be an exciting one, especially if you worked in a startup before, if you're joining one, and there's new great and exciting companies coming up all the time. So that'll be a fun one. And really, I think we're going to look then a bit more at revenue ownership and how commercial is your CS organization. How is it really going to help grow and drive your growth in the year ahead? So those will be exciting. Like we said, we'd love your thoughts. If you haven't signed up for our email list, please just go out to the jasonstakeon.com, and there's a sign up form there, and you'll get notified when new episodes come out, or if you have questions or other great things. And we also have some great guests lined up for this year. I'm excited about that and always looking for more. So if you are a CS professional and you have a bold vision and a stake you want to put in the ground, or some great experience you want to share with others, we'd love to have you as a guest. So just come to the website, thejasonstakeon.com, and let us know your thoughts. So
the guest stuff's really exciting, because this is, we've had some great guests kind of towards the end of last year, but just kind of we've got a nice lineup of people that are actually going to come and talk as well, which would be really cool to hear.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. But for me, thank you everyone for joining in. Hope you've enjoyed this. And we really do love your thoughts. Jason, any closing thoughts?
No, that's all. I think we're both really excited about 2020 and just doing the podcast, but having more guests on talking. But I think we're going to see some really cool and exciting trends and changes in the world of customer success. So super excited to be here. So thank you very much, everyone.
Great. Thank you. Bye now.